Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Hoskins. I'm still hearing. Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll wait a sec. Just stare at that cute little baby. Can't. Okay, I'll keep talking. My name is Kristen Hoskins, and I'm the Director of Lectures, Courses, and Community Celebration at the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. We're absolutely thrilled to be here in Lowell for City Talks, Shaping the Future of Leadership. It's a series of off-site programs associated with the Obama Portraits Tour that are currently on view at the MFA. We also have an associated exhibition called Portraits of Leadership. We crowdsourced a collection from around the community, and many of them came from Lowell. On Monday, we welcomed thousands of people in to see the portraits on our first of 4 free days. We hope that you can join us on the other free days on September 19th, October 10th, or October 30th for other free day opportunities. Or if any of you in the room want to come, just come see me or the MFA crew up here. I want to thank the Boston Foundation for generously supporting the City Talks. This wouldn't have been possible without their support, and we are very grateful. And a huge amount of thanks goes to my new friend, Christa Brown, founder and intrepid director of Free Soil Arts Collective. Her energy, thoughtfulness, and care give me hope that the hope that we need to bring us to a brighter future and place. So thank you so much for joining us here. I'm so happy to meet all of you and welcoming the MFA here in Lowell. And please join me in welcoming Christa Brown.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Before we get started, I'm going to invite all of our panelists to come up. We have Diamond Asaneh, Vong, Corey Robinson, and Vladimir Saldana. Thank you, Kristen, and welcome, everyone. Oh, sit wherever you feel free. My name is Christa Brown. I am the founder and executive director of the Free Soil Arts Collective, where since 2019, our mission has been to seed liberation through storytelling. I want to thank our business partners for their support in making this event possible. We have the MFA Boston, of course, UMass Lowell, the Greater Merrimack Valley Convention and Visitors Bureau, Enterprise Bank, Nancy L. and Richard K. Donahue Charitable Foundation. Thank you so much for being our lead partners for this event. I also want to give a special thanks to Thaddeus Miles and to Kristen Hoskins for helping this event happen. I would also like to acknowledge the land that we commune on today, the original homelands of the Pennacook communities with the Pawtucket Village and Wamasett Village. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this territory. And we honor and respect the many diverse Indigenous peoples that are still connected to this land on which we gather today. So I'm super excited to be joined today by our incredible panelists and for what is sure to be a rich conversation about shaping the future of leadership. We are joined today by Diamond Asaneh, a spoken word poet, Corey Robinson, City of Lowell City Councilor for the Centralville District, Vladimir Saldana, who is a commercial real estate agent and property manager with the Edge Group, and board member with Fortaleza, Greater Lowell Boys and Girls Club, and the Merrimack Valley Housing Partnership in the house. Hi, Jim. And then Vong, owner of Humanity Style, business coach at the Entrepreneurship Center at Community Teamwork, Inc., and board member with the Cambodian Mutual Assistance Association. So thank you all for being here today. So I'm going to kick it off with a quote from one of the most pivotal, culture-shifting books of our lifetime, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. In it, Dumbledore says, "It is a curious thing, Harry, but perhaps those who are best suited to power are those who have never sought it. Those who, like you, have leadership thrust upon them and take up the mantle because they must, and find to their own surprise that they wear it well." So let's kick this party off right. So Asaneh, you are a multifaceted leader. You hold many hats, including becoming increasingly vocal and speaking out against white supremacy and racism. Can you talk a bit about your early life and how it led you to kind of take up the mantle that you take today?
Speak into this? Okay. Okay, I'll start off the party. I'm Khmer, Cambodian. My family are survivors of the Cambodian genocide in the late 70s under the Khmer Rouge regime. And just like so many other Cambodians that came to Lowell or other parts of the US, they escaped to Thailand. And when I say escape, I mean the literal word escape. Through the night, hiding in ditches, running away from the KR, and anything like that. And so they made it their way to Thailand, stayed for a few years. My sister and I were both born in the refugee camp. 2 months after I was born, in 1981, we were sponsored to come to the US by a wonderful family in the South Shore. Once my family got their bearings in, they decided to move to Revere because they heard there was a large Cambodian population there. So we made our way to Revere and then finally settled to Lowell. And I think around 83, 84, my dad decided to move here to be closer to work. And so a few short years later, in 1985, my dad was involved in a fatal traffic dispute, late night from Revere to Medford. And he was beaten to a coma by white men who were a foot taller than him, who was a stronger built than him. My dad was my height, 5'2", petite. So one punch was all that it took. He fell back, had a concussion, and that is what kind of sealed his fate. He laid in a coma for about 10 to 12 days where he died after that. Yeah, so this is a huge part of my story, and I've held it in for my entire life. And unless you really spoke to me very privately, one-on-one and whatnot, you wouldn't know. But I just couldn't ignore it anymore during the pandemic, all the anti-Asian hate crimes. I just couldn't stay silent anymore. I had to use my voice and speak up. Thank you.
So this will not be your typical panel. I just want to say that right now. A lot of us on the panel today have spoken about how rare it is to have an all person of color panel. So the conversations that you hear and observe today, I think are going to be something extremely vulnerable. And I just appreciate you for sharing your story with us. Diamond, can you talk to us a little bit about your life and what brought you to Lowell? You're a spoken word poet. And from what I observed, you talk very openly just about what you observe. What brought you to Lowell and how did poetry find you?
Hello, y'all. Great. So my family and I came to Lowell in 2005. I was born in Boston. And my mother, she was homeless. So we were staying at an East Boston shelter. And the shelter, I just want a disclaimer. I wouldn't know any of this story unless I actually talked to my mother. And I did, and it's real. Okay. But okay, the shelter transferred her to Methuen. So she didn't have nobody, no family, no nothing. So it was just us. And we stayed in Methuen for 10 years. We were evicted out of our Methuen apartment. And my mother was working in Lowell at the time. So we ended up just moving to Lowell because it's closer to her job. From there, so we came here in 2005. I lived all over the city in Lowell. I lived in South Lowell, Centralville, Highlands, everywhere. And I moved many times because of eviction, because of just, the systemic homelessness issue, really. High rent, can't afford it, single parent issues, really. I've done poetry my whole life. I just always wrote, just in between time. Kindergarten, really, I started like a little playbook. And then in 4th grade, the part of the curriculum is like poetry. So I really liked it then. I went to the Timony school at that time. So that's where it really birthed. And then when I came at the Rogers 8th grade year, there was always like a poetry recital at the end of the year for all the 8th graders. And that really stuck with me. So then in my senior year of high school, I found Free Verse, which is a local group, slam poetry group in the city of Lowell. And I made the past the summer final. We went to New York. I went to the New Yorican and had my first like real poetry experience. That was cool. And I've just been doing that ever since. And here I am today.
Yes, thank you, Darren. And Vlad, on to you. So you also wear many hats. You've been in banking, community organizing, now real estate. How did your early life kind of prime you for the life you lead today?
Well, I want to start by saying thank you to you and everybody else that helped put together this panel, because it's an honor to be here and to sit here and share my story and share my words to whoever wants to listen. I guess it's a little like, why me? I think the first thing I said to you was like, why me?
We all said that.
But I don't think my early life primed me for any specific role that I ever had or held or do. But what it did though, right? Growing up, I was born in Dominican Republic. That's the motherland. And my parents, immigrant parents, as many people know who have to grow up with immigrant parents, install a set of values in you. And those values transpire in everything I've done and everything I get involved with. From the early on, I remember very precisely being told over and over that being here in America, it's an opportunity, but you need to learn how to seize it, how to seize that opportunity. And I've just carried that on, really. And wasn't the best student early on. There was a shift when I entered Middlesex Community College, which is shout out to MCC. I know we're at UMass, which is my alma mater as well. I came here after. No, I also give shout out to both because I came here after, finished my bachelor, but that's where my education career really became serious by a series of mentors and educators that believed in me because I've never had that. And it carried on when I came to UMass Lowell with another set of mentors and guidance that helped shape my, I guess, path. That's on the education side. Career-wise, I think I've had great mentors that have helped me understand sort of how to professionally develop and how to choose my passion and interest in being committed to making a difference in my community where aligned with my work. And I know you'll be shocked to hear like how does banking really relate to community change? But it does. And anybody that understands the system understands that banking is a very, very important role in community development. So that's where I discovered my passion for community development and organizing. I got involved in grassroots organizing with many friends. I call them friends because they're folks that I've, gone to the trenches with, organized politically or civically in things that we believe should change. And yeah, so I guess my life story has evolved around people, and that's who I give the most credit to. I think just the love from friends, mentors, my family, my very supportive family that are involved in everything I do and have my back. So
Thank you, Vlad. That's beautiful. And last but not least, we have Corey. You are a lifelong Lowellian. Lowellian is a word, y'all. Lowellian. You chose to make your home in Centralville, the neighborhood that you now represent. And you have said that growing up biracial with both African-American and Irish heritage provided you with a great orchestra of cultures. Can you tell us about your early life in Lowell and how it shaped you?
Sure, thank you. Growing up in Lowell, like coming from the household, we were taught at a young age, there's good, there's bad people. I was close with both sides of my family. My mother's here tonight. I think that kind of shaped the way I viewed, the community, the city. I spent a lot of time on both ends with my father's family, who's African-American from Mississippi and Alabama, as well as with my mother's family. In the 80s, I grew up in the Highlands, Lowell Highlands, and that's around the time the Southeast Asian push came to Lowell. They were my neighbors. Basically, in school, a lot of the kids from my neighborhood, that's when we had neighborhood schools, I clicked with them instantly. Our language, we might not be able to speak. They looked like me. We played marbles, we did, kid stuff. I remember the days not understanding or understanding why 7-year-old kid didn't have shoes on. I remember my mom going in the room, coming back with a pair of my sneakers. That was the kind of household that I grew up in. It was a household that we were taught people are people. I think I didn't see a lot of that in other households with kids that I grew up with in the Highlands, but I'm fortunate and I'm thankful that the lessons I learned early on was people are people. And I think with that being instilled in me from a young age, it allowed me to view and view opportunity and view the city that I called home my whole life differently. It almost instilled a sense of stubbornness to me, because if someone tells me you can't do something for whatever reason, I would go above and beyond to prove a point that it could be done. That opportunity exists for everyone. And I'm so thankful that I developed that sense of stubbornness as a result of being shown to care for others in the community that need it. Even if I didn't understand it at the time, it's still something that I look back on. And it makes me emotional, because I think that basic sense of human good shared with others in the community really does start to get people to think differently. And I think, this panel, everyone in the room, it's one thing I'm noticing as I get older is more and more this city, people are genuinely starting to come around and care and want to know other stories and appreciate and respect and hear and understand the differences and also celebrate these differences. So growing up as a Lowellian, I'd say my background, I am only fortunate that I was born in '77, probably in a time in the city where, you know, there wasn't a lot of biracial children. It never impacted my mom or my dad or my families. The love and the respect from both sides that I received, I think helped make me who I am today. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. We're grateful to have you on our city council and also here on this panel. So all of you have used your voice in different ways to make change. And I think a lot of times when we think about the civil rights movement or the queer movement, people sometimes will say, oh, you know, it was a different time and we just didn't know. But I think a lot of folks don't stress enough that what led to changes in laws and systems was fighting, protesting, violence. It wasn't as if presidents woke up and were like, we got to do something about those Black people. We had to fight. And this happened in Lowell. So for those of you that may not know, in 2017, there were 13 plaintiffs of color who sued the city of Lowell. And they said they challenged the at-large voting system, arguing that the city at-large electoral system violated voting rights. Now, Vladimir here on the end was one of those plaintiffs in the case. And you all sued the city and won. And 2 years later, the city agreed to change its voting system, and we now have folks like Corey Robinson on our city council, which is just. So Vlad, if you can you break down for us just how did this happen?
Yeah, I'll do my best because I mean it's been a long time, right? And
Hey, yeah.
So I remember some of the early on conversation around like doing this action that was going to have a reaction by certain power structure of the city, right? And the status quo. And I just remember some of the early on like living room conversation about building this case. I was sold immediately because when the small organizing team that was behind the idea of like, look, we want to get, nope, thank you, I should appreciate that. So the idea was very small, right? We need to figure out a way that people of color can get real access to make effective change in our community. And that starts with being elected in office, right? In a city like Lowell, the city council and the school committee makes a lot of important decisions for our communities, but does not reflect what the community population is, right? Lowell, it still is growing in a majority minority city, meaning that the amount of people of color that live in the city is actually larger than the white population. But our city council, you would never been able to say that if you look at our city council for the last 50 years. The same actually school committee before the last, I think 2 years ago, had never had a person of color on the school committee. That's just so you're, just think about this, right? The school population of Lowell is 37% Hispanic, 20-something%, I'm not exactly sure, of Asian American, and about 10, I can't remember the structure of Blacks and African American. So 70, let's just say, ballpark 70-ish or more are people of color, yet there was never a person of color on the school committee. Right, that you didn't need to sell me the product that to sue the city was a pathway to get there. I was sold immediately. But you mentioned something earlier, which is people fought for these rights in 1965. At the height of the civil rights is when they passed the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which was the law that we used to sue the city, right? So what, how many years later? Well, I can't do the quick math off my head, but it's over 50 years later, right? Over 40 something years later, we're using a law that was passed thanks to the effort of those civil rights leaders, which God bless their soul, we were able to really bring effective change to the city of Lowell. So when people are advocating and hitting the streets and protesting over a right that they want, I'm gonna get behind it because it's gonna make a difference. Maybe not today, but maybe 50 years from now, 100 years from now, you may have a pro bono attorney from Boston that are gonna charge us $0 to sue the city of Lowell that had the opportunity, which I want to mention, had the opportunity and the chance to do this without going this path, right? Because let's not also be so abstracted to say that, well, why did you have to sue the city? Because they had the chance to do it on their own and they never did. If the symptoms are there and you as the petitioner don't want to change it, then you're going to be forced to do it, right? The city had a referendum. There was other movement, and thank God for those grassroots leaders and leaders that advocated for the city election to change so we can. The idea was basic. Let's try something different so we can see if the results are going to be this. And we're seeing it now, and it's not the end, right? It's not the end. I want to quote something because it's the best analogy I've heard so far on like why we had to sue the city and the voting electoral election had to change in the city, right? If you, the quote I remember being explained was, if you have 5 kids and 3 of them like Disney movies and 2 like horror movie, and you're getting them to vote every Friday for movie nights, what is the movie that's gonna get chosen every Friday? Disney, right? That's what was happening in the voting process here in Lowell. So our votes, minority votes, was proven that we were voting for our candidates, we were coming out, but we couldn't elect our candidates. It was impossible because the voting block of one neighborhood and the second one were electing the entire city electoral, they were hijacking the electoral process. And that was a dilution of the vote. So thanks to the Voting Rights Act, thanks to those civic leaders, and I'm glad and happy of that we're here today. And I think we have a long way to go. We still haven't when it's not done, right? Because just because the election was changed does not mean that all of a sudden we're gonna have a reflective body on the city council and school committee. Now we got to do the work. We got to have people like Corey Robinson and the brave folks that have ran for office. I know I'm talking about election after the sad result of yesterday, but we have to continue doing the work. So I'm proud to be one of the 13 that signed our name at the cost of our personal reputation, the attacks personally, folks driving by my house because they apparently I didn't live in Lowell after owning a home here for 7 years. But there was a lot of scare tactics that were used so we don't sign our name behind that lawsuit by the status quo. And I have to say that they're not gone, right? They didn't poof away. It's not like cockroach when you spray them and run away. They're still here. They still have power in the city. So the battle is not done. The fight is not done.
Thank you, Vlad. I also mentioned, folks on Zoom, folks in the room, we will have time for Q&A as well if you want to go deeper on this. But I want to go to Corey. In a sense, you on our city council, it's a manifestation of the work that Vlad did. And I'm curious about how you came to learn about the lawsuit and what prompted you to run.
Thank you. First off, I have to say, thank you to Vlad. Thank you to all the people that worked with Vlad to get this change done, because this city would have been, I think, in a lot worse shape than we are currently if someone didn't step up to really push this through. 15 years I worked for the city of Lowell, DPW. I ended up becoming a union president while I was employed there for about 8. I got to see firsthand what it was like, the status quo and the power structure and the dynamic of city council. They came around with their hat in the hand, acting like they're community forward or hey brother, when they needed a vote. As a result, from what I'm seeing, it got to the point where as an employee, they pulled the rungs of the ladder out. I ended up leaving due to the political structure and the way it was organized, the city at the time. I went to work for another community, and I had been hearing, bits and pieces of a lawsuit potentially coming against the city. Growing up in the city, I was thinking, this is something I'm interested in. Let me just keep an eye on it. And then when I finally found out that it did go through, and you hear, oh, well, the city kind of cooperated at a point to make this happen. No, that's not the truth. There was no way around it. The litigants did their homework. They had a powerful team put together, and they weren't taking no for an answer. And it went through. At that point, I started trying to figure out, do I even want to get back involved with the city? I'm working in a different community. I'm no longer, advocating or dealing with the employees or the residents, but I missed it. I saw it took me about 2 weeks of talking to friends and family, truthfully. And I just said, you know what? For 15 years, I felt like I was on the inside looking out. When the opportunity presented itself to step up, advocate for my district, my neighborhood, as well as the city, and the number one freedom that came along with this change, I didn't have to play or bow down to the status quo powerful voting bloc to even have a realistic shot. And I met with some neighbors in my district, bounced the idea around. They said, let's go. And we put a grassroots small team together and worked our butts off. And if it wasn't for that change, we wouldn't have seen results. I mean, I know it's a statewide race, but even last night, I sit back and we had a young Southeast Asian candidate, worked. 65 votes, decided that race. We had another woman that stepped up, 100 votes, decided that race, and that was against an established old Lowell politician. When you start seeing these kind of things, it had started somewhere. This lawsuit inspired and changed the culture. It inspired and changed members of the community. It provided people a realistic glimpse that you can run and you can win. And even if you don't win, the opportunity still exists. And so I think you're going to see more and more people become engaged finally, because the work that was done with Vlad and that team, the success I think that I was able to have, I'm fortunate to have, to work with my community in Centralville and get elected. I'd like to take it again, and it's about throwing the rope back. If I can just briefly touch, State Rep Vladimir Howard just joined us. And I don't mean to. Well, see, and I don't mean to put her on the spot, but the reason I have to bring this up is I remember still, I knew nothing about campaigning. My team was green. None of us ran. We did have some advice from Ms. Karagianis and her husband that was involved, but I still remember the night before Vana was sworn in, after she had pulled off a monumental upset in probably one of the most political neighborhoods in the city at the time. She took an hour out of her night she gave me so much advice as to what it took, how to prepare, different tips and tricks along the way that she picked up. That's throwing the rope. And just like Vlad and the litigants broke this door down, that's what I look forward to, throwing that rope back over, because that's the only way we're gonna keep this momentum going. That's the only way you're gonna see progress. That's the only way more and more of the community is gonna feel comfortable enough to say, I can do that too. And anything I can do to help develop that sense of stubbornness, like I mentioned earlier, sign me up, because that's the way we need to go.
Yes, yes. It's just beautiful to see the ripples still. So Diamond, you lived in Centralville, you voted for Corey. Hey. How does it feel for you now? Do you feel any different? Do you feel like more represented? How did it feel for you?
I feel hugely represented. Honestly, since 2005 that I lived here in Lowell, it's to see representation, it's been a lack, like a huge lack. And I don't want to like bring up your education background like loosely, but it really meant a lot that the candidate I voted for got their GED. And I served so much of the community that needed a GED. And I did a year of, I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, y'all. Okay. I did a year as an educator at UTech in the GED program. And to see the young adults accomplish and go to greater heights, Corey's a representation of that. It's a possibility. I look at him as a possibility for myself too. And my siblings as well. It's just, I don't know what else, but honestly, it's just a huge representation, and I couldn't imagine what it would have been if he never won, and I just really appreciate everything that's been set forth.
Yes. Annie, what about you? Do you remember the time? How was it for you to get word of what was going to happen?
I do remember I still had my business on Merrimack Street. And I remember Vlad and other people that I was very close to had told me about it. And I was like, whoa, you guys are suing the city? I didn't know you can do stuff like that, right? And then, at that time, I just got the business in 2014, and that was like 2017, right? So I was still finding my way, finding my voice and everything. And so like Vlad and other people that I knew that was suing the city, I was like, wow, we're like the same age, and they're doing like this badass stuff, trying to make this change. And here I am like selling clothes. But I just like, obviously you guys did such an amazing job, and I know it wasn't easy, but I obviously thank you guys as well, because just touching base on what Diamond said, representation does matter truly. To see someone that looks like you, resembles you, comes from like struggles of being a refugee or an immigrant, culture, language, different foods. I remember when Representative Howard got elected, I cried. I was like, oh my gosh, she's a Khmer woman. I'm a Khmer woman, and of course, furthermore, just saying Chancellor Chen, I was like, oh, okay, this is so awesome. Like this, just to be amongst just this community and all these people making change, I feel like it is a ripple effect. And what they did pushed me and inspired me to turn the boutique more than just a store. It became a safe haven for people. It became very inclusive for people to feel comfortable. And, later on, I did a lot of events in the store just to do my part in the community in this world.
If you don't see it, you don't think it's possible. And I think this is a testament to that. Yeah, Vlad.
I just want to piggyback something because people like Annie and many, many, many other folks. I mentioned earlier, there was some negative reaction, right? But there was also a lot of positive from folks like Annie, and there's other in the rooms that were very supportive. Organizations as well, doing, information sections, like there was so many community organizations, Low Votes, and many others that really helped get the word out and explain what was happening, what was the change that was coming, and why we did this. Because again, it's very easy to negative news runs a lot faster than the positive. So at that time, I just remember those 2 years. Corey mentioned this. The city did not willingly agree. Let's just make that clear, right? This lawsuit was introduced, and it took 2 years of it's called I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the terminology. It's not litigation because we didn't get to litigate it, but it was like a discovery process and back and forward and negotiation in courts. But that was not a repeat because of me and any of my co-plaintiff. So I will not say whose fault it was, but it was not ours.
Thank you, Vlad. So before opening it up to Q&A, I just want to ask each of you one question. So Diamond, I think with Vlad's story, everyone's story here, I feel as though when you step into your voice or who you really are, sometimes it's out of your comfort zone, whether it's like public speaking or you may not have any experience and you're like, but I want to do this thing. How do I do it? So Diamond, with your poetry and being an artist, like how did you get comfortable using your voice, or were you always comfortable?
Honestly, I was never comfortable using my voice. I'm still working. It's still a journey. I'm still here, y'all. I don't know. I'm just trying to humanize y'all, myself, and like everything. Sorry, can you repeat the
That's
question?
fine. Maybe like, what do you think when you're performing poetry? Like, what are you really saying? What do you want people to walk away from hearing you? What do you want them to feel like?
A lot of the times my poetry is just about being a Black woman, really, and like the struggles that I face, the adversities as well. Mainly like talking about a Black woman's perspective, like emotionally, because that is something that many people ignore, I guess. A lot of people think Black women are like bionic women, or we don't really have, like, not much hurts us, but a lot hurts us. It's just politics on not showing you how we're hurt. And a lot of my poetry talks about that. And it's not easy to like talk about it, but when I do have that courage, I say a prayer before my poems, and that's how I get it. Truly, it's God-given.
Thank you, Diamond. So Corey, you've said on your website, many of your peers had struggled to achieve success because of the lack of opportunities available to them. As a city councilor, somebody like myself that doesn't really know the ins and outs, how do you work towards building that kind of environment as somebody on the city council?
Great question. As an employee working for the city, one of the main questions I got, if not 2-3 times a week, how do I get a job with the city? I mean, and this was, I'm talking on Salem Street in the Acre with a high Spanish population, down in Highland Park from younger Southeast Asian kids. How do I get a job with the city? I think one of the things we need to do as a city councilor is we need to make sure that these opportunities exist, first and foremost. Second, that the community and the public is well aware that these opportunities exist. One of the things that I've been thinking recently is nationwide. One of the big problems we're having and on a local level, it's killing us. Supply chain and drivers. Your average CDL driver, $27 to $30 an hour, which is a decent, solid wage for a young person trying to provide for their family. I don't see why we're not tabling and out in the community at these locations and recruiting from where the people are, as opposed to forcing the people to come to the city. I think we start developing training and entry-level talent pipelines with those in the city that are looking and never thought that opportunity existed, and you'll see diversity in the workforce. I mean, it's a matter of creating and establishing, this is the path that's on the table in front of you. If you're interested, come with me. This is how you get to step A, then to step B, then to step C. Walk them through it. Because I myself, growing up, even like summer youth employment and training programs, summer jobs, I knew nothing about that. I was lucky. I happened to go to school at the Daily. It was a lot more affluent people that also sent their kids to the Daily. I would hear from my friends that I played Little League Baseball with that they were getting a summer job with the city. We knew nothing about that. So I kind of had to lean on them to find out, how do I get a job with the city? It shouldn't be like that anymore. Everybody should know the opportunity to get a job with the city is there. We're having lifeguard shortages. One of the things I've been advocating for since I was on is really pushing summer youth jobs, because I myself realize the value of that. It gives people a taste of working in the community for the community. It's not for everybody, but it builds that sense of pride, that sense of community. And it also goes to show these opportunities do exist for everybody, not just the chosen few. And I think that's another byproduct of, to break down with Vlad and the litigants, is that instead of 5,000 people holding those opportunities close, we need to provide those opportunities to the 115,000 people that live in the city. And as a counselor, that's one thing that I see we can do, and we're gonna do a lot better, is provide those opportunities to show people that you should be able to fill an application, enter an entry-level job if you want, with your city, with your community, and advance through, because a lot of people don't even realize what's the first step in that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Vlad, what about you? You've worked in both the public sector, the private sector. Some may think those sectors are not too far apart. How does that experience kind of shape the leadership you've embarked upon lately?
Yeah, thank you. I think the experience, my professional experiences have helped me develop a philosophy or a methodology, or whatever you want to call it, in my head, of real how you affect change and how that translates to the everyday life of folks, and who your target audience or your demographic, who you're trying to make change to. And that's like thinking about it on a system wide. I feel like I've really learned that systems are designed through policy, right? Like they write the policy, but then there are system players who are your administrators or your day-to-day operators. But the either for-profit or nonprofit, they're all working towards their sole mission and purpose through this, I guess, policies made of systems that we all agree to as a community. So what I've been lately on is like my thoughts run to, if something is happening on the ground, whether it's homelessness, whether it's high unemployment rate, whether it's affordable housing, you name it, right? The issues in Lowell are not unique only to Lowell. Like these symptoms are being felt by other communities. So whether you're for-profit or nonprofit, I think you should think about how those things affect your operation, what you're trying to achieve or your mission, whether it's to make a lot of money. But if you want to make a lot of money and the city is not performing at what you needed to do, then you have to work and affect the change that will benefit your institution. I don't know if I'm being clear, but what I'm trying to say basically is everything has to be looked at through a system. And if And if we want to really affect change for those folks that are being negatively affected by the system, then that means government, right, has to be reflective. We talked about representation, so that way the policies, when they're being written, are being written by people that have felt the inequalities, that have felt the discrimination, that have felt walking into City Hall and not being able to communicate in their language, yet there seemed to never be an answer to how do we solve the fact that 97% of the school population of the teachers in Lowell do not reflect the kids that are going to school there, right? These are all system design. It's not that crazy to say, let's look at what the system was designed for, and let's change it if it's not working. But people get really hurt in that conversation and grab onto and like don't want to change things because it benefit and is doing exactly what the system was designed for. So my leadership is focused on that. I want to change systems that are negatively affecting the people at the bottom of our community and the people that are struggling for housing, the people that can't find to have adequate paying job, because they could have a job, but that job may not be paying enough. So that goes back to what you said, right? The corporations are affecting the community in that aspect. So anyway, I can go down a whole.
No, today, Representative Ayanna Presley, I watched an interview and she says, those closest to the pain should be closest to the power. Okay. So before Q&A starts, Ani, you have our final question. So in 2021, you spoke on a panel to testify before the Mass Advisory Committee to the U.S. Commission of Civil Rights to report for bills to pass. And your words would ultimately contribute to a report published that August that was called Hate Crimes Against Asian American Pacific Islander Communities in Massachusetts. You also spoke at a press conference with Senator Ed Markey addressing anti-Asian hate crimes. And I saw this on your Instagram. You said, doing this work is never easy, especially when speaking openly and vulnerably about a painful personal experience. But I know this work is necessary, and my story is part of a bigger story that needs to be told over and over again in the hopes of making a difference and change. Why did you feel so called to use your voice to the fight? Lend it to I'm not getting emotional. Yes.
To honor my parents, first and foremost. At a very young age, I may not remember much, but I feel it, and it lives in you your entire life. It's like a dark shadow that follows you. And I've always wanted to speak up. I just didn't know how. I felt a little ashamed because I didn't really understand what really happened. I have to do research on my own to know what happened to my father. I couldn't risk re-traumatizing my mom over and over again. But you know, I grew up knowing that, you know, there's a lot of injustices in the world. And I also know that myself as an Asian American woman, there are some privileges that I have too. You know, there Indigenous folks, Black folks, everyone before me that has suffered immensely. Okay, there. Maybe need some water. No, you know, I just feel like it's just in me to finally say something, and I'm just tired of so many things that we see, especially in our city. And, you know, I because of the business, it afforded me to have a platform to speak up, to use my voice, to lend my voice for people that are afraid to speak up. Like my mom, you know, I was only 4 back then, and she was, I don't know, 33, 34, hardly spoke English. We were just here for 4 years. You know, they spent 4 years under the Khmer Rouge and then 4 years in the US, and America did break our heart, but I'm also very grateful for so many things too, you know? So yeah, it's just part of being a human is like, we should really do good. I know that sounds really cliche, but I mean it, you know, my business is humanity, so I think it makes sense. So, yeah.
I just want to thank all of you. These are the leaders I want in my life. Okay? Okay? So now we have a few minutes for Q&A. So if you're here in person and you want to ask any of the panelists a question, we have mics here and here. If you're on Zoom, just write it in the chat. And we have a few more minutes with these folks. Anyone have a question in the room? Yes. We shall watch you intently.
Well, I want to thank you for doing this. This is tremendous. And I first want to thank Christa for acknowledging that we're here on Indigenous people's land, and recognizing that as a statement, I think is something that we should be doing more often. My question, I think, might be for Diamond or Ani, but it's related to leaders. And how do you participate so much, knowing that you probably are not wealthy and probably have a support system, but it seems like in this city, so many women, especially women of color, are economically disadvantaged, whether they have the rental problems with so many people are unable to afford their rent in a normal fashion. How are you able to find the time to give so much of yourself back to the community? Because I know it's a big sacrifice. I'm sure it's a big sacrifice for your families and for your own lives, but it's such a benefit for us as a community. Thank you.
Well, okay, so I was raised by a Christian Jamaican mother. So honestly, community work and outreach has always been a part of my life. So I do it without even thinking, or I just do it. I've always reached out like Bibles, give a handout, or like I've done like just community work. My mother worked in Lawrence prior to working in Lowell, and we've always just, I don't know, it just was part of me, like truly, and probably my Cancer sun sign. I don't know, like, but I just give without thinking because I just know what it feels like to lack, and it hurts, but mainly that.
Thank you for the question. For me, very similar to Diamond. My humble beginnings, I guess you can say, to the US was really grounds me a lot. And my mom being a single parent growing up, seeing how hard she worked and everything, I developed a lot of empathy and compassion for people. And also during the time when we first came here, there were so many organizations that helped our family and the refugees. And during my father's murder trial, then Governor Dukakis advocated for us. There was a lot of people that advocated, and I just feel like now I'm in a position to advocate for other people and help other people. And so we care about the community.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we may have a virtual question. Any in-person questions in the meantime? Yes, Timna.
First, I just want to thank all of you. This has been so great. So my question stems from my own background in human resources, and I often hear the phrase that there's no diversity because either people aren't applying or there's not enough of us, which we all know is a lie. So as I've kind of gone up the ranks, you become very alone because you end up being the only person that looks like you. And that's currently my own situation in a team of 26 people. So my question is, what do you say to that? You know, how can we utilize, like Councilor Robinson, how you were saying, you know, recruitment and such? How can we utilize the community or people to either have corporations see us, you know, even as far up as we go, right? We still have these same problems. And then what do we do to, or what do you think we can do to make it more accessible for these folks who obviously have the background, the skills, the education, and the want to kind of move up and work? Thank you.
Oh, okay. She mentioned your name, so.
I mean, those are both excellent questions. I think showcasing talents in the community by the different community organizations, for example, CMAA, Latinx, even Low Votes, any of these groups that can gather young professionals and kind of put their talents on display for recruiting purposes and kind of draw in and reach out to companies that might be looking for professional talent at that level and say, look, our community is loaded with this field or this field or this field. Our members of our community, here are their resumes, almost like a reverse tabling. Instead of the company going and tabling in the community reaching out to these companies saying, this is what we have right in your backyard, wake up. And I think that could be a very powerful role for some of our community partners to engage in. And we have so many different community partners that could kind of source this pool of young professionals that exist. I mean, we're sitting in our backyard in the University of Massachusetts. Like, we have plenty of talent right here. And it's a matter of taking that talent and knocking on potential employers' doors saying, what are you looking for? Take your pick, because we have a plethora of what you might need. And I mean, anything that, as far as the council goes, to help facilitate some of that, but I think something like that would be better served almost with the community partners and even the university. That might be something to have a conversation with, to start reaching out and addressing some of these voids in the professional development areas within our city.
I don't know. I had an answer for her. You know, I've heard this conversation many times, and I would almost ask you, as the expert in human resource, to help achieve a diverse, whatever, like staff or board. But I always think about this every time I hear the phrase, oh, it's really hard to get people of color to join us, wherever that phrase may be coming from, institutions, nonprofits, for-profits, small, whatever. It always reminds me of this. The reason why you're having an issue is because your culture in your organization does not embrace that diversity or culture you're trying to achieve, or that person or that demographic you're trying to achieve. So take a look at your culture. And oftentimes I found, this is from personal experience, that they mean well, but genuinely do not have the actions behind the words to really achieve that goal that they want. We want diversity and we really want to achieve diversity, but we don't want to get rid of Mr. Smith, who runs the department of whatever, because he's been so loyal to the company for 20 years. But Mr. Smith may be a low-key racist, discriminatory person that overlooks and overpasses people of color that are qualified because, you know, biases, or women, right? That's it. I think it has been proven by many studies that when you have women and people of color running organizations, you achieve the diversity that you want. So that's it. There's no, I'm sorry, but we can like debate this to a philosophical science, but it's really simple. Get the people that can change your culture, empower, really empower them, and you'll see the effect. I mean, we're dealing with that. I don't run it, but I co-founded an organization with other leaders called Fortaleza and achieve and our purpose, right? One of the purpose that we have is that before my son, who is 5 months, becomes of age to go to Lowell High, that he has Black and brown teachers, because I didn't have that. And it's not fair that the students are not getting educated by the people that look like them in Lowell. Like if I lived in a community like Carlisle, I would understand, but I live in Lowell and I'm not leaving. That's it. That's all I have to say.
We have a question on Zoom from Mona Tyree. Hi, Mona. She says, thank you to all. Question to the team. How do we come together? How do we in a multicultural city come together as leaders so that we can work on causes that are important to us all? How do we in a multicultural city come together as leaders so that we can work on causes that are important to us all?
I'm looking down my panelists because I don't want to talk again. I just finished. Ladies first.
Can we? Will we?
Okay, I will go.
Please.
Hi, Mona.
Love you, Mona.
Yes. I think in recent years, we can all agree that we have seen a lot of changes, especially more people of color coming together, expressing their voices, making the votes, making the changes. And I think as a collective community, instead of just having so many people with great ideas, of course, but instead of having like different groups having the same idea, how about we just like actually come together because we're trying to achieve the same thing. So I think that's how it can happen. It can happen.
Vlad, Mona said, answer Vlad.
Let me just preface by saying that it is absolutely impossible to believe that leaders of color should all agree on the issues and all be backing each other, because white people don't do that. Women don't do that. Nobody else does that. It's impossible, right? We all grow up differently. We have different knowledge, different values and principles. But fundamentally, I think the question is, if there's an issue that is affecting majority people of color, how do we rally up behind that issue to affect change? Look, the prime example, we try to change the election. We successfully changed the election process in the city of Lowell. Not every person of color was supportive of that. To my face, were telling me that I was not going to say some of the words, but there were some people that weren't happy, that they liked the at-large system, that it worked for them and it worked for their people. I didn't believe so, but right, it's impossible. It's not a utopia. We don't live in a utopia, but I do have to say that there's also another element to this that we can't forget. The status quo loves to divide. They love to create division. I may not agree with my brother Corey, but does not mean that I hate him. I just disagree on that issue with him, and that's okay. It's all right to disagree. And it's bad, I think, when they try to pinpoint us and like, well, if you didn't support this, then you definitely don't. No, that's not true. I just don't, that's not my issue. I don't want to save the whale. That's not what I want to do. But, you know, I'm just kind of like, I know I'm being a little comical, but it's true. I feel like it's really hard. But I think collaborations, where there's opportunities to work together as much as possible, but it's just, it's naive to think that we are just all going to kumbaya and dance around together. It's not, I may like merengue and you may like hip hop.
True.
Exactly. But we still party together.
Make beautiful music. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. We have an in-person question from Thaddeus Miles.
Hey, so y'all already know what my question is, but I think when I first I want to just say thank you, because there were several times that I sat there and cried tears with you. And that was good for my heart and for my soul. So I just want to say thank you. The other thing is we as people of color have a tendency sometimes to push away joy because we deal so much in sadness and grief and in trauma. And so what I want to know is, what are you doing? And I see some of yours right now. Those that are on Zoom don't see it. I see the little one in there, but I want to know, what are you doing to continue to push that resilience by the way of joy? Where are you getting your joy from each and every day to give you that power to continue to move forward? As this gentleman asked before, how do you give? And I believe a lot of that giving and a lot of that comes through those moments of joy. So what are you doing? And that's for each of you. I know I looked at the time. I'm like, I know we got enough to give a short answer. And Corey's making his way back. So it's right in time. So that's all. I just really want to know, because I would like to, as we end this and close this out, I really like to know, what are your joy points?
That's a beautiful question.
I find joy in roller skating. I find, honestly, I would one day like to own a rink and give that to the community of Lowell. I would. It's $1 million though, so I'm gonna need a lot of community support. So I find joy in roller skating, doing my nails. I like fashion, just, you know, a lot of things. I know a lot of people, a lot of my peers are interested in a lot of things I'm interested in. And I would find joy in having like a building for them to roller skate, to do their hair, to do everything that makes a person feel good. Like, I'm capable. I dropped out of cosmetology school, but I still know how to do hair. You know, I know how to do so much like those aesthetic things. So I just feel like a lot of people tend to like aesthetic things too. I don't know. I find the joy in that.
Thank you, Thaddeus, of course, always with the words. For me, it's in the last few years, discovering everything that's inside of me and whatnot. I've taken part in joy in reclaiming my native tongue, the Khmer language. I don't write or read, and I don't speak well. I don't think there's anyone Khmer in here, but I speak broken Khmer. But I'm doing the best. But I'm starting to actually really learn how to read and write, to reclaim that, and to, you know, I don't have the business any longer physically, and I always loved having people come in wearing clothes, they're bonding over just anything. We talk about anything, you know, and I try to find ways to still do that with the work I do at CTI to support businesses and help them achieve their dreams and whatnot. So that's part of it. I want to be really quick, be transparent while trying to find joy in all of this. The last 2 years was very difficult for me. Everything triggered the trauma that I've suppressed, and my mental health has declined severely in 2 years. I've shared this with you guys. I've kind of, every time I would speak out about all the hate crimes or any injustice, I needed a month or two to just replenish my soul and feel good. You know, and like you said, like, what's the drive? The drive is just thinking about everyone that doesn't have the opportunity to have this voice, to be in a position of power to help people. And so, you know, but I'm back and I'm ready to be part of, you know, the movement and everything. Thank you.
Thank you. I find joy in a variety of places. On a personal level, I truly enjoy connecting with someone that I didn't know and getting to understand something, a spark. This recently happened to me. One of the muralists that was just in the city, Funky, I got to spend some time with him. It was so many interesting things that just got me thinking through conversation with this gentleman. And I mean, born in Paris, grew up in Montreal, took it upon himself to relocate to Cambodia and learn his heritage. And just like what his art meant to him. Like those kind of connections with people, I genuinely find joy from, because it's almost challenging yourself. You start looking at things differently, because I mean, and it comes usually when it's completely unexpected. I can have a conversation just waiting on, the bus or something with somebody, and something will spark that. Wow, like I really find joy in my personal life with that. Professionally, to actually see being in a position that you get to pretty much speak for the voices that were ignored. And when you work with somebody on what might seem to be a small issue for a lot of people, but when that issue gets corrected and there's something in place to prevent those small issues from continuously happening, that's joy. I mean, many are aware, a lot of us are in pretty much thankless jobs, but you do it because you love it. You find that joy in helping others and advocating for others. And it was the same thing with the union. When I was involved with the union as a labor rep, I found that joy in advocating for my coworkers, my colleagues, standing up and speaking about the injustices that exist. So, I mean, I personally and professionally and personally, I find joy in others. And in return, it helps me to sit back and look at myself and find things that I'm proud and find joy in with myself. Thank you.
So, Mr. Thaddeus, I mean, you bring me joy. You know that. I think I've definitely constant between very happy but my joy is really my family and my friends. My son is back there, 5 months old. That's been the biggest joy of my life in a long time. I haven't been this joyful to come home and carry him. But every single person in my corner brings me joy. From Rafaela, my parents, my friends. Yeah, I'm just getting emotional because they really got my back. And that's how my joy, it's just constant. I can have shitty days, bad days, negative stuff online, haters, whatever. My corner is there, solid. That's my joy.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us in person, virtually. If you have any questions, we see you, Allison Lamy. We see you, Aisha. If you can email us at info@freesoilarts.org, we will get your questions across. Anyone in the room, if you feel like conversing from a distance, depending on your comfort, feel free. But just thank you all for being here. Hopefully this is part of that joy for you that Thaddeus was talking about. So thank you all for being here and have a great Wednesday. Yes, thank you.